There's a note to the manager's desk. It's old, the paper yellowed to the color of weak tea, the ink faded to a ghostly blue. It has a list of rules for closing up, 7 of them. I laughed when I first read it, a dry, dismissive sound in the huge silence of the office. I figured it was some hazing ritual for the new guy. A prank left by the last manager, a man whose face was a roadmap of pure exhaustion. But it's 3:03 a.m. now. The last employee clocked out hours ago. The entire theater is supposed to be empty, just a silent metal and velvet tomb until morning. But it isn't silent. I can hear clapping. It's faint, but it's unmistakable, and it's coming from the audio feed for Theater 3. And the first rule on that yellowed paper is just screaming in my head, a frantic, repeating mantra of terror. If you hear clapping from Theater 3 after 3 a.m., barricade the door. My heart is hammering in the quiet of the office. This is a joke. It has to be. A faulty speaker, a crossed wire, an echo from some old recording. But as the slow, deliberate clap, clap, clap continues, another more primal part of my brain is telling me this is no joke. It's a warning. And I have to decide, right now, if this is all some elaborate prank, or if I'm about to fight for my life. It had all started so promisingly this morning. My first day as the official manager of the Majestic. It wasn't some huge multiplex. It was one of those beautiful, decaying relics from another era. The kind of place that smells perpetually of buttered popcorn and dust. The sign outside had half its neon letters burned out. So at night, it just read, "The Mages." It was a small-town theater, the only one for 30 miles, and it felt like stepping back in time. The red velvet seats were worn smooth, the gold-painted trim was chipped, and the air just held the weight of a million forgotten films. I loved it instantly. The outgoing manager, a man named Arthur, was waiting for me. He looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. He had these wide, bloodshot eyes sunk into dark, bruised-looking circles. His hands trembled when he handed me a heavy ring of keys. "She's all yours," he rasped, his voice thin and dry like rustling leaves. "Treat her well. She's particular." I smiled, trying to look like I had it all under control. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of the place. Been managing theaters for 5 years. I'm sure there's nothing here I haven't seen." A strange look crossed Arthur's face. It wasn't a smile. It was something closer to pity. He just nodded slowly, his eyes drifting toward the dark hallway, as if he was looking for something he was glad to be leaving behind. "Just be careful," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The nights get long here." He was out the door before I could ask what he meant. I just chalked it up to burnout. Running a single-screen theater in a small town had to be a grind. I spent the day getting my bearings, meeting the small team of teenagers who ran concessions and tore tickets, and learning the building's maze-like layout. The heart of the whole operation was the manager's office. A cramped room cluttered with old movie posters, dusty binders, and a bank of flickering black and white security monitors. It was on the desk, tucked under an old, heavy stapler that I found it. A single folded sticky note. The handwriting was a spidery, frantic scrawl. It was titled simply, "Closing Shift Rules." I unfolded it. "If you hear clapping coming from Theater 3 after 3 a.m., block the door and do not open it until dawn." Never sweep the aisles alone after closing. Something follows the broom. If the curtains in any theater close on their own, say thanks immediately. It's not empty-handed. Do not sit in the back row of an empty theater. The hooded man watches from there. Ignore laughter from the walls during matinees. It's not the film. If a single patron demands Theater 3 after midnight, refund and escort them out. Never argue seats. At exactly 3:33 a.m., turn off all projectors. If one restarts, leave the keys and never return. I read the list once, then twice. Then I leaned back at the creaky office chair and laughed. It was brilliant. A perfectly crafted piece of hazing for the new guy. The hooded man watches from there. Sounded like something from a bad horror movie. I could just picture the teenage staff giggling, waiting to see how I'd react. I decided to play along. I folded the note, tucked it into my shirt pocket, and got on with my day. A little harmless fun. The evening rush was normal. Families buying oversized sodas, teenagers on awkward dates, the usual rhythm of a small-town cinema. By 11:30, the final showing was on. By 1 a.m., the last of the staff had clocked out, their goodbyes echoing in the suddenly vast and empty lobby. I was alone. The silence that fell was absolute. The kind of quiet that feels heavy, like it's pressing in on you. The building groaned and settled around me, the ancient HVAC system sighing like a sleeping giant. I started my closing duties. I took out the trash, wiped down the sticky counters, and restocked the candy. Mundane stuff, normal stuff. I'd done it 1,000 times in other theaters. But here, in the dim, echoing halls of the Majestic, every little sound was amplified. The clink of a key, the squeak of my shoes, the hum of the ice machine. I decided to start my final walkthrough in Theater 2. As I pushed open the heavy door, I saw it. The massive deep red stage curtain, which I knew had been open, was slowly, silently drawing to a close. There was no motor sound, no whirring. It just moved with this fluid, unnatural grace, as if pulled by invisible hands. My heart kind of jumped. For a split second, my mind flashed the note in my pocket. Rule number 3. If the curtains close on their own, say thanks immediately. It's not empty-handed. Stupid, I muttered. It had to be a malfunction. An old motor, a short in the wiring. That's the rational explanation. I just stood there for a moment, watching the two halves of the curtain meet with a soft thump. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt watched. It was an absurd, childish feeling. Just to humor myself, just to get rid of the ridiculous knot forming in my stomach, I cleared my throat. Thanks, I said. My voice sounded so small and foolish in the empty auditorium. Nothing happened. Of course, nothing happened. I felt a flush of embarrassment, even though no one was there to see me. Shaking my head, I turned my back on the stage and started my sweep of the aisles. That's when I remembered the second rule. Never sweep the aisles alone after closing. Something follows the broom. I paused, holding the long broom, feeling a fresh wave of idiocy. This prank was really getting to me. A grown man, spooked by a note and a curtain. Determined to prove how silly it was, I started sweeping. The rhythmic swish-swish of the bristles on the sticky, popcorn-covered carpet was the only sound. Or so I thought. After a few rows, I started to hear something else. A faint, trailing sound right at the edge of my hearing. a soft, dragging noise. It seemed to keep perfect time with my own sweeping, but just a half-second behind. Swish, swish. Shh. I stopped. The sound stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I stood perfectly still, just listening. Nothing but the low hum of the emergency exit signs. I started sweeping again, faster this time. Swish, swish, swish. And there it was again, right behind me. Shh. It sounded like another broom, but lighter, like it was made of dry leaves or brittle twigs. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. The aisle was empty, just a long, dark cavern of vacant seats stretching up to the projection booth. I was completely alone. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Tim? Sarah? Very funny." Only the heavy silence answered. "It's the old building," I told myself. "Weird acoustics. It's an echo. It has to be an echo." I abandoned the sweeping, leaving the broom propped against a seat. Suddenly, I just wanted to get this over with and get out. I headed back to the lobby, walking much faster now. The feeling of being watched was no longer a vague sensation. It was a real pressure on the back of my neck. As I passed the main entrance, I saw movement outside the thick glass doors. A figure silhouetted against the dim streetlights. It was just after midnight. A customer? We were long closed, but as I got closer, I saw a tall, thin man in a long, dark coat that seemed way too warm for the weather. He was staring intently at the movie posters. Before I could do anything, he pushed on the locked door. He pushed again, harder, a grim look on his face. I sighed, my manager instincts taking over from my growing fear. I walked over and unlocked the door just enough to talk through the gap. "Sorry, sir, we're closed." He didn't look at me. His eyes, dark and deep-set, were fixed on the hallway leading to the theaters. "I need a ticket," he said, his voice flat and toneless. "For Theater 3. My blood ran cold. Theater 3. The name hit me like a punch. I remembered rule number 6. If a single patron demands Theater 3 after midnight, refund and escort them out. Never argue seats. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "Theater 3 is closed. Everything is closed. The last show ended hours ago." For the first time, he turned and looked at me. His eyes were wrong. They were flat, like polished stones with no light or emotion in them. They seemed to look right through me. "The show is about to start," he stated, like it was a fact. "I have my seat. They are waiting for me." A wave of pure primal dread washed over me. This was not a normal customer. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to get this man away from my theater. The rule. I had to follow the rule. "Look, sir," I said, fumbling for my wallet. "I can't sell you a ticket, but here." I pulled out a 20. "This is for your trouble. A refund for the ticket you couldn't buy. Now you really have to leave." He stared at the money, then back at my face. His expression didn't change, but I felt a shift in the air. A chill. For a terrifying second, I thought he was going to force his way inside. His thin lips peeled back from his teeth in a grimace that wasn't a smile. "The show must go on," he whispered. "They need an audience." He didn't take the money. He just turned, his long coat swirling, and melted back into the shadows of the empty street. I slammed the door and threw the deadbolt, my hand shaking so badly it took me 2 tries. I leaned against the cold glass, my breath fogging it up, watching until he was gone. I had to finish my rounds. I felt a desperate need to just get out. My skepticism about the note was gone, replaced by a gnawing, terrified belief. I did a quick check of the other auditoriums, my eyes darting into the dark corners. I deliberately avoided looking at the back rows. Rule number 4 echoed in my head. Do not sit in the back row of an empty theater. The hooded man watches from there. The very thought made the hairs on my arms stand up. As I was leaving Theater 1, I risked a glance up toward the back of the room. My heart stopped. For a single sickening second, I saw a shape, darker than the dark around it. The silhouette of a head and shoulders, draped in what looked like a hood, sitting in the very last row, dead center. It was perfectly still. I blinked, and it was gone. Just an empty seat. A trick of the light, I told myself. A shadow. My freaked-out imagination. But I didn't believe a word of it. I practically ran out of the theater, my footsteps echoing way too loudly in the hall. I retreated to the safety of the office and locked the door behind me. My hands were trembling. I sat down and stared at the security monitors. Screen 1, the lobby. Empty. Screen 2, the main hallway. Empty. Screen 4, concessions. Empty. And Screen 3 showed the closed doors of Theater 3. I picked up the yellowed note. It felt heavy now, each word a prophecy. I thought about the curtain, the sweeping, the man in the coat, the hooded figure. Was it all just an elaborate prank? Or was Arthur's haggard face not from burnout, but from terror? Was this what he went through, night after night? I couldn't get the man's words out of my head. They need an audience. My eyes were glued to the digital clock on the monitor. 2:45 a.m., 2:50 a.m. The silence was no longer comforting. It felt like the silence of a held breath. Every creak of the old building made me jump. I remembered the rule about laughter in the walls and wondered if the sounds carried over into the night. 2:58 pagi. 2:59 pagi. My gaze was fixed on the monitor for Theater 3. Still, empty. 3:00 a.m. The clock ticked over. Nothing. A minute passed, then another. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. A wave of relief washed over me. It was all in my head. A spooky old building, a clever prank, and my own runaway imagination. I felt foolish. And then at 3:03 a.m. it began. It started so quietly I thought I was imagining it. A soft pat. A pause. Then another pat. It was coming through the office intercom, which was patched into all the theaters. The unmistakable sound of hands clapping. A slow, rhythmic, deliberate clap. Clap, clap, clap. It was coming from Theater 3. I'm back in the now, the note clutched in my sweaty hand. The clapping continues, steady as a metronome. It's not a faulty speaker. It has a presence. It feels intentional. My brain is scrambling for an explanation, a recording, a teenager hiding inside. But my gut, coiled in a cold knot of fear, knows better. The curtain, the sweeping, the man at the door, the hooded figure, it all slams together into one terrifying truth. The rules are real, And rule number 1 is screaming at me. Barricade the door. I move before I can think. I throw the office door open and sprint down the hall. The clapping gets louder as I get closer to Theater 3. It's not just one person anymore. The rhythm is breaking, becoming more complex. It sounds like 2 people, then 4, then a dozen. It's growing into an enthusiastic round of applause. It sounds like a full house. I reach the doors to Theater 3. They're vibrating slightly. My hands are shaking as I grab a heavy steel popcorn cart, the wheels squealing as I shove it against the double doors, wedging the handle under the push bars. It's not enough. I grab 2 large sand-filled ashtray stands and jam them against the cart. Then a rolling trash bin, heavy with the night's garbage. I'm panting, my muscles straining. The moment the bin slams into place, the clapping stops. The sudden, absolute silence is somehow worse. I stand there panting, my ear pressed against the cold wood of the door. I can't hear anything. Then, a voice. It's clear and crisp, a man's voice, amplified as if by a microphone from inside the theater. It sounds like it's right next to my ear. The show is about to begin. Please take your seats. My blood turns to ice. I stumble backwards from the door. Before I can even process that, a new sound begins. A vicious, violent, metallic rattling. The door handles, the push bars I so carefully blocked, are shaking back and forth as if something is trying to force its way out. The barricade holds, but the cart is groaning, skittering on the floor under the assault. I have to get somewhere safe. My mind races. The projection booth. It's upstairs, a solid room with a thick, locking steel door. It's my only chance. I turn and run, scrambling up the stairs to the mezzanine. The rattling from Theater 3's door seems to chase me, echoing up the stairwell. I burst into the projection booth, slam the heavy door, and throw the deadbolt. The sound is instantly muffled, but I can still feel the vibrations through the floor. I lean against the door, my chest heaving, and look around my new sanctuary. It's dark, except for the glow of control panels. 3 massive projectors sit like sleeping beasts. I am safe. For now. My eyes fall on the digital clock on the main console. Trey O'Nelly. And I remember the final rule. The one that sounded less like a rule and more like an escape plan. At exactly 3:33 a.m., turn off all projectors. If one restarts, leave the keys and never return. A new, frantic energy hits me. I lunge for the console. The main power switch is under a red safety cover. I flip it up and slam my hand on the button. The hum of the machines dies. The panels go dark. The building is plunged into an even deeper silence. Even the rattling downstairs has stopped. I stand in the pitch black, my own ragged breathing the only sound. The clock on the console has a battery backup. I can just make out the faint red glow. Trey O'Nelly Trine Triney Bore. A minute passes. Silence. 2 minutes. The only sound is the frantic pounding of my own heart. Maybe it's over. Maybe I survived. And then a soft, whirring sound begins. It's coming from the projector on the far right. The one for Theater 3. A single green power light blinks on. The fan starts to spin. The lens warms up, and a beam of faint, flickering light cuts through the darkness. My monitor, tied to the projector's feed, flickers to life. It's not a movie. The image is black and white, grainy and unstable, like old newsreel footage. It's the view from the stage of Theater 3, looking out at the audience. The theater is packed. Every seat is filled with shimmering, translucent figures. Some are in modern clothes, others in fashions from the 40s, the 60s, the 80s, a ghost-like collection of patrons from across the decades. In the back row, I can just make out the hooded man. Near the front, the gaunt face of the man in the dark coat stares back, his eyes like black holes. They are all perfectly still, their spectral faces upturned, waiting. And then, as one, they all turn their heads, not towards their screen, but towards the projection booth window. They turn and stare directly at the lens, directly at me. A slow, rhythmic clapping begins again, not from the monitor. This time, it's all around me. It's inside the projection booth, a dozen invisible pairs of hands applauding me. For me, they have their show, and now they have their audience. The last rule wasn't an escape clause, it was a final test, and I had failed. Leave the keys and never return. A sob of pure terror escapes my lips. I don't think. I just act. I rip the heavy key ring from my belt and throw it on the console. I lunge for the door, my fingers fumbling with the deadbolt. The clapping gets louder, a deafening roar of approval. I wrench the door open and stumble out into the hall, slamming it shut. I don't look back. I fly down the stairs, past the still vibrating doors of Theater 3, through the lobby, and burst through the main entrance into the cool, pre-dawn air. I run. I just run, my lungs burning, the sound of that ghostly applause chasing me down the empty streets. I run until the sky begins to lighten in the east. I run until the first birds of morning start to replace the sounds of the night. I never went back. I left my car in the parking lot. I left my last paycheck. I just kept walking to the next town and caught a bus heading anywhere but there. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I think I can still hear it. A faint, distant echo. The soft, rhythmic sound of clapping. I know the show at the Majestic never really ends. The performance goes on, night after night. And I know that somewhere, in that dusty, decaying theater, they're waiting. The curtain is rising. And they are always, always looking for a new manager to appreciate the show. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next descent into the darkness. We have more tales of terror coming very soon.